Welcome back to the Castair University today, guys. We're going to go through the most common symptoms, causes, and how to fix the problem when you're having one of these safety valves popping or air blowing out this bleeder. Let's get right into it. So, on the Castair pumps, there is what's called an intercooler. It carries the air on a two-stage compressor pump from stage 1 of compression to stage 2. That's what this chamber is on a C2. Each head has its own intercooler. And again, that's solely there to carry the air from stage 1 of compression to stage 2. The C1, which is similar to the C2 pump, just 2-cylinder versus this one being 4-cylinder, also has the fin jug off the left-hand side of the pump that carries the air from stage 1 of compression to stage 2. A 2-stage compressor has 2 stages of compression. The air is compressed twice before it goes into the tank. So there's always going to be a chamber that delivers that air from the stage 1 to stage 2 of compression. And there has to be a safety valve on there just in case there's some sort of issue or blockage where the air couldn't get through this chamber so it doesn't overpressurize that chamber and literally blow it up like a grenade. So if this safety valve is ever popping, it's a 70-pound safety valve. You can try to change the safety valve, but 95 to 98% of the time, guys, it's an issue with the air flowing through this chamber, whether it's a restriction or one of the back 3 valves has an actual problem or has failed. That's what causes that air to not flow through this chamber and overpressurize and pop that safety valve. Again, 95, 98% of the time it's not this safety valve, it's doing its job. But give us a call if you have any questions and we'll run through how to change the valves and access and clean the valves if that's what's causing that problem. Now, if this safety valve is popping, this is what's called the 200-pound safety valve. This is after all the stages of compression. So if this safety valve is popping, there's only one thing it literally can be. There has to be a restriction, guys, in the airflow, whether it's this tube, in the aftercooler on the back, or in the check valve in the tank, that's causing the air the pump's producing to not get to the tank like it can or wants to be able to. If there's any flow restrictions or air restrictions in this tube, or again in the cooler on the back, or in the check valve at the tank, it's going to cause this 200-pound safety valve to pop because it can't get to the tank like it should. And again, it's there and it's popping for a reason. When the pump's producing air, it doesn't know what's getting to the tank or not. So if you don't have a way to alleviate that pressure if it can't get to the tank, it's going to blow this chamber up again. So again, that safety valve is a 200, 250-pound safety valve, depending on the unit. If it's popping, the sole cause of that issue is there's a restriction in the air the pump is producing getting to the tank. So this valve here, guys, is what's called your bleeder valve. The sole purpose of this valve is to bleed everything from the check valve out after the pump shuts down. That way, the next time you go to start, you're not starting against built-up head pressure or load in the pump and in the lines. That's really hard on them and can burn up an electric motor. So there's 2 different calls we get, 2 different issues and symptoms and things to look at. So if this thing is bleeding air continuously and really profusely while it's running, then you have an actual problem with the Schrader valve that's inside of that valve, inside of this elbow. So to address that, what you do is you take this line off, you take this elbow off, and from the back side of that elbow, you take a valve tool and access that Schrader valve, which is inside of that elbow. So again, the sole purpose of this valve is to bleed the head pressure out after shutoff. So while the machine's running, you might get a little bit of air puffing, something like that. That's venting the crankcase. But if it's profuse and constantly bleeding air out really heavily, then you got a valve core issue, or that Schrader valve in that elbow has failed, dislodged, or it's just not operating. All you got to do is change that Schrader valve. The other symptom we get a lot of calls on with this valve is after shutdown, it bleeds all the tank pressure back out. So at shutdown, you should hear this valve go and bleed off all that head pressure that's built up in the pump and in the lines. That way you don't start against load. But if it's actually bleeding tank pressure out and doesn't stop and causes the compressor to kick back on because you got to that low pressure setting where the compressor would kick on at, the actual problem isn't within this valve. This is designed to bleed everything from the check valve up and out. So if your in-tank check valve isn't holding your tank pressure in your tank, guys, it is going to bleed all that tank pressure back up through the pump and out this valve. So again, 2 different problems, 2 different symptoms. If it's bleeding air out profusely while it's running, it's a problem with the Schrader valve inside of the elbow. If it's leaking tank pressure and bleeding profusely after shutdown and not stopping, then it's actually an issue with your in-tank check valve. The sole purpose of this in-tank check valve is to hold the air in the tank after shutdown. So again, this bleeder valve is doing the job it's supposed to do, which is bleed everything from the check valve out. But if this check valve isn't holding and releasing tank pressure back up, it'll keep bleeding until your compressor has to kick back on again. This is an example of an in-tank check valve. The sole purpose of this valve is to let the air go in the tank and close and not let it back out. So again, like the bleeder valve, if it's leaking all your tank pressure out after shutdown, what that's telling you is this part that moves in seats, there's got to be something that's failed or something in the way that doesn't let it move in seat properly, that's letting the air come back from your tank out that bleeder valve. So again, if the bleeder valve is bleeding all the tank pressure out after shutdown, it's actually this in-tank check valve that's meant to move, meant to seat and keep the air in your tank after shutdown. Thanks for watching this episode of Castair University. And one thing, guys, and I know I say it a lot, just call if you have questions on this stuff. We're here to help you guys and walk you through any of these problems or issues you might have on a Castair compressor and any other brand air compressor. So reach out anytime. 320-796-0851.